Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another first impression video on the new post from PoE regarding the 3.11 Harvest League. We're going to talk about the new brand gems and brand changes in Path of Exile Harvest. Now, I wanted to talk about brands yesterday, but I think today will be a better time since I posted all of this. So let's read through it and then I'll give you guys a couple of pointers and my opinions on this. But I have not read this yet, so let's check it out. We're introducing several brand new skills and one brand support gem. We also reworked existing brands and reviewed how their mechanics work. Today's news covers what changes to expect to provide a preview of the new brand gems. So changes to brands. Brands were first introduced many leagues ago with Storm brand and Armageddon brand. Brands are all cast on location and attached to nearby enemies, repeatedly activating to perform their unique effect. They detach if the enemy dies, ready to jump to another target. We finally added some new brand seals: Arcanist brand, Penance brand, Wintertide brand. These come alongside new options for how you can build and play brands. Like the new Swift brand support, these additions introduces a more aggressive and active playstyle. Now, I'm personally a big fan of active playstyle, but the way I interpret this is not in favor of playing brands. But we'll see, because I think that it might turn the build clunky. You guys remember how a lot of people complained about SS Strength Contagion because you had to cast 2 abilities, and it was years later that people started realizing that, oh shit, it's actually overpowered. It's really fucking good. But some people still think that it's clunky. So let's start off with this. Arcanist brand is a new brand skill that also supports any triggerable spell linked with it. Each time the brand activates, it triggers a support spell, allowing you to build your own brand setup, potentially even triggering multiple different spells in succession. As brand mechanics naturally have great clearing capacity, the support skills have less area, projectile range, and chain range. Triggered spells have a damage penalty to balance their ability to activate multiple times. The trigger spell also deals more damage to the branded enemy. Projectiles will hit the branded enemy, but will aim at another nearby enemy each activation, so they often take advantage of pierce, chain, and fork effects. Arcanist brand has a shorter duration than the other brands, so isn't something you'd use on any build to passively trigger effects, but when building for brands, it can be very powerful. Like other brands, cast speed affects activation rate, so it benefits for most spellcaster investment. Now, the first thing I thought about when we saw this is Arc makes Arcanist brand, right? I think that's going to be really cool. But I think a lot of people are missing out on the utility option this can actually provide for a lot of builds. Take a look at Blade Blast builds. Take a look at Dark Pact builds. Even Wither and whatnot, because if you can get this trigger and having a brand attached to an enemy that you can actually automatically apply Wither, Wave of Conviction, spawning skeletons for Dark Pact, spawning blades for Blade Blast, or hell, get Desecrate out for Volatile Dead, Detonate Dead, or Cremation, is actually pretty goddamn insane. Is a lot of builds, like I know I played a Ball Lightning Miner build, and what I did was I actually had a dual totem setup where I would cast one totem that would curse for me and one totem that would cast Wave of Conviction. That's how I bursted down bosses a lot easier. So I put those things down on the field, and then I precasted my mines. The boss would spawn, and he would be cursed and Wave of Conviction in the middle of the detonation of my mines. Now, a brand like this will allow me to consistently, depending on the trigger rate, of course, get corpses out for builds like Detonate Dead would actually work very well. We might actually look into doing such a thing. So having a brand that automatically triggers these things and it scales with cast speed might be easier to trigger corpses, for example, for Desecrate, blades for Blade Blast, and all of these things in a better way than what you can do with totems or hell, even self-cast, right? And not sure if you're going to be able to cast Arcanist brand Desecrate with Spell Cascade, for example. But imagine if you create a brand that pours out Desecrate on the field, right? And that will attach to an enemy. If the enemy are 2 bosses or there's some ads around, they'll attach to one each. There's going to be corpses everywhere that you can detonate very, very smoothly and easily for the sake of your other damage approaches. And this goes hand in hand with something like Blades for Blade Blast. Imagine you being able to put a brand out and it would just spawn blades all over the hell of the field of your field of view, and you'll just detonate everything with Blade Blast. I think the utility option from Arcanist brand is overlooked by people thinking about which ability would be the best to use for this. It's going to be very fun to see the actual numbers on the Arcanist brand, to see if people actually utilize this mainly for damage, or if it's only going to be a utility option, which I think would be really cool addition to the brand approach. Basically, they're creating another spell slinger. It's a branded spell slinger approach, or a caster's, I don't know, a caster's spell slinger ability. They just want to automate everything, it seems like. I don't know. Penance brand builds up energy on the branded target with each activation. Though at first the activation don't deal any damage, each activation also spreads energy to another enemy, and then that enemy can then spread it to another uncharged enemy next activation, and so on. This means that with repeat activation, it can rapidly spread through a group of enemies, energizing them all. When the brand is removed, for example by its duration expiring, it being recalled, the target dying, or being replaced, all of the energy is released. It releases an explosion around each enemy, dealing physical damage with a portion converted to lightning. The more energy the enemy had on it, the greater the damage and area. You can pick and choose which mechanic to focus on to detonate your Penance brand. If the branded enemy becomes fully energized, they'll start pulsing damage around them. Okay, so there is a damage sequence. Okay, that's good. Otherwise, you'll have to use brand recall consistently for each pack. Reaching full charge won't waste any damage. You can shorten the duration of the brand to have them automatically go off after a brief time, or use brand recall to force detonation when you detach the brand. I'm not so sure about this. Like, one of the biggest issues with delayed damage, and with delayed damage I mean you have to apply something that would then, after X amount of time for different mechanical reasons, would then apply the damage to kill the pack, means that there is a gap or a window of opportunity for the enemies to deal damage to you. And the way the game is balanced right now is that if you don't kill any the harder content within the first few milliseconds and they hit you and crit you, you're most likely going to die in many more builds than not. So I'm not so sure how Penance brand will perform, but again, we'll have to see the numbers on it. But that's my opinion on the Penance brand. Wintertide brand applies cold damage over time to the branded enemy and chills them. Each activation, the brand's damage effect becomes more intense on that enemy. When the brand is removed, such as when the duration expires, it is recalled, the target dies, or the brand is replaced, the damage over time effect is released in an area. This affects both the branded enemy, if they're still alive, and all other enemies around them. This means that if the damage effect has grown in intensity through many activations, it could apply a very potent damage over time effect in an area. So the Wintertide is only applying damage over time to that one enemy it's been branding. Unlike other brands, Wintertide brand has a base limit of 2 brands per target. Okay. With a Runebinder Keystone, you could apply 3 Wintertide brands to a single target for massive cold damage over time. This means that your character builds will be quite different from other cold damage over time skills, but the duration-based nature of brands means you can easily cast a cold skill like Vortex, Cold Snap, or Arctic Breath in between, refreshing your brand effect. Like, the only thing I can see, assuming there's no hit damage, you can't curse and hit with it, but the only thing I can think about is like scaling the chill effect perhaps, and adding Bone Chill. Because usually Vortex build uses Bone Chill for your Frost Bomb or the Cold Snap, right? But this is again another situation like I talked about with the Penance brand, where you're in a situation where you apply it to one enemy. That means the entire other pack of that you're casting this on is still moving around, still doing damage to you. And not until you expire, remove it, or it dies that this AoE effect will happen. It's going to be very weird to see how this is going to work. A little bit, I don't know, boys. I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptic to this one. Swift brand support. Greatly lowers the active and inactive duration of brand, but increases its activation rate. For a single brand being cast once, it's not as good as other supports, but if you're rapidly placing many brands, it's huge damage increase. You can play a much more aggressive brand playstyle with the support. It also works very well with Penance brand to rapidly detonate, as well as Armageddon brand to make the most of its short cast time. So Swift brand is basically just increasing the activation rate and just lowering the duration of a brand. So with a Swift brand support, you'd have to cast a brand for each each pack, right? Because I don't know. I don't see the brand. I don't see the brands having enough AoE or range to clear packs that are widely separated. So it feels to me that a Swift brand support would require you to cast a brand for each pack you encounter, which is extremely counterproductive in the current state of the game. I'm not very fond of this at all. Let's see if how much they fucked up brand recall. Brand recall still instantly moves your brands to you and activates them, but no longer refreshes the brand's duration. I think that's a fair change. It now consumes mana based on the brands recalled. This prevents brands benefiting heavily from Archmage support without the same mana upkeep the support usually requires. We generally feel that if a common build has an ongoing damage with very little input, it should deal below average damage or require massive investment. Certain brand builds that instantly refresh brand duration indefinitely provided too much power for their opportunity cost. Rather than lowering the damage of these builds, we changed the mechanic that let the build be played passively. The cooldown of brand recall has been lengthened, but we also provided new avenues for investment so that you can still bring it down to similar length. As a small change to remove some more of the potential passivity of brands now return to their original or recall location when dropped by a monster, rather than the drop monster's location. What? This puts a greater focus on brand attachment range and prevents the brand from disappearing into the distance while killing monsters you've yet to see. This is so weird. You see this? You see this? With a Swift brand? This is what I'm talking about. Like, you'll have to cast it per pack. See the difference here? This pack was here, right? And then he has to cast another one on the next pack. And he has to cast another one on this pack here. This pack here did not reach this pack. So that means he had to cast one here, and then one here, and then he'll have to cast one here, and then one here. You know, it's like, I don't know. Wintertide is terrible. It looks awful. Now, I think Arcanist brand can work very well because you can utilize spells that would actually reach other approaches. Then that would actually make sense. Oh, that's it? Maybe he's brand new. Come on! No, I'm not a fan of this at all. Not even close. So I think Arcanist brand will be the new way to play brands, that's for damn sure. I think Penance can potentially work pretty cool with Swift brand, but I don't know. I feel like the distance the Penance brand is spreading is not enough. You have to cast for each pack, which sucks ass. The brand recall, I'm not a big fan of the way they did it. I don't mind the duration part, but not the rest. People on Reddit just complain that brands became new totems. I mean, I feel like Arcanist brand is going to be pretty cool to use as a utility. I love the idea of that. The Swift brand support, I mean, I can see Swift brand being pretty cool, but outside of bossing, it's going to be a little bit so-so, to be honest. Wintertide it looks awful. It just looks absolutely awful. You only do damage over time to one guy in an entire pack, where every single person or unit in that pack has a potential situation that it can actually one-shot you in the harder content. Like, the way we handle harder content in Path of Exile is to kill it instantly. That's why a lot of builds had a lot of issues when they were encountering 100% delirious maps. Mainly because of the fact that as soon as you encountered a 100% delirious map, they were very tanky. And if your build didn't have an absurd amount of damage to handle that, a white little shitter could one-shot you because they were so fucking tanky. Or basically, the tanky they are infinitely doing more damage to you, basically. Because if you're not killing them, they have infinite damage, if you will. But to look at it in a more realistic way, if you don't kill something instantly, it will attack you. That's what we're trying to avoid, right? And for the most part, people are going in with builds that have all their defensive mechanisms and mechanics and all the buffs and what they want up. And then when those buffs are out, you've already refreshed your flask to cast them again or use them again. That's how we play the game. That's how we survive. And we freeze or shatter, we kill, explode, all of the mechanics we're utilizing. But as soon as an enemy is able to do a damage to you, the game is not balanced for us to tank the hardest contents. It really isn't. You'll have to have a build that is specifically designed to actually survive that. And I mean, hell, we've seen, 20,000 ES builds getting one-shot in some contents. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Wintertide, you put damage over time on one guy. Everyone else is not even chilled. And then when you explode it or remove it, all of these mechanics that needs to be taken into consideration before that damage is applied is still not a freeze effect. That's just a damage over time effect around it. I don't know. I think Wintertide is going to be terrible. I'm not sure how brand recall is going to be utilized, to be honest. Unless you have like a couple of brands and you use it one sort of here and there on enemies or bosses. Like, let's say a betrayal encounter spawns and you have brands all over the place. Instead of casting new brands, you just put the brand recall, or on a boss, you just move them all in. But other than that, I feel like you'd rather just cast a new brand. I don't know. I must say that visually, Penance brand looked pretty cool. Penance brand looked pretty goddamn cool. I want to see the numbers, but obviously this is just a theoretical first impression. But my first take on this is that they kind of screwed over brand builds in general. Like, completely. I think this is going to be absolutely god-awful. Arcanist brand is going to be very fun to see what builds people are going to do for the sake of damage approach, but I think that the utility approach from Arcanist brand can be very, very cool to see as well. Penance brand looked cool. Wintertide was absolutely terrible. And the Swift brand support seems to be the way to play brands, but it's going to be a more aggressively and active playstyle, which means it's going to be shit, because people are going to treat it like a Runebinder build, where they're like, oh my god, this is so good. So good. Oh wait, it's actually clunky as fuck, because I have to cast one brand per target. Then again, Arcanist brand can fix that, but I mean, that means Storm brand, Armageddon brand, Winter brand is going to be completely fucking discarded. But again, theoretical approach. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this, and more PoE content coming out on this channel in the coming days leading up to 3.11. So till next time, boys, stay safe, keep rocking.